Hello, everyone. My name is John Turner, and I am the Manager of Community Development and Research at the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act, is a $2.2 trillion economic stimulus bill passed by Congress and signed into law by President Trump on March 27, 2020, in response to the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. NIFA is conducting interviews with Nebraska agencies who are the recipients of this funding and providing housing resources. Some programs are required to allocate all funding by December 30th, 2020, while others have 2 years to allocate funds. Understanding the timing of this funding and the numerous people in Nebraska that need help, NIFA wants to share these valuable resources via our social media platforms. So today we are joined by Liz Mayfield, who is the Executive Director of Hope Harbor and Grand Island, and she's here to talk about how she's expanding services with these CARES dollars. So hello, Liz, and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. So I think the first thing is just kind of help people understand a little bit about what Hope Harbor is.
Absolutely. So, Hope Harbor is kind of like the little shelter that could in central Nebraska. So, we are a program in central Nebraska that serves individuals and families that are experiencing homelessness. Primarily, that's our main demographic. We are a 104-bed shelter, and those beds are split between emergency beds and transitional beds. Primarily, we serve most demographics except for single men. So that would be single women, two-parent families, single parent families, single dads, single moms, married couples, pretty much everybody except for single men. And up until the CARES Act funding, our primary concern was our shelter programming and our community assistance food pantry programming. Those were kind of our main focus, and all of our grants and program dollars were spent and have been spent on those, focusing on those programs. With COVID, we were challenged with keeping shelter capacity at 50%, and that's a large challenge. Prior to 2020, and even into the beginning of 2020, we were at 100% capacity at our shelter. It's very difficult to kind of think about what 50% capacity would look like without coming up with a solution to expand some programming. And for us, the obvious choice, I guess, and that was to take advantage of the Response to Recovery grant through DHHS to allow us to add rent assistance, mortgage assistance, and utility assistance to our clients. And what this has done is it's allowed us to continue to maintain that low capacity in our shelter, the low occupancy, because we can prevent a lot of individuals from entering that homeless system to begin with. And that really allows us to keep that capacity where it should be.
That's excellent. So you said rent and mortgage assistance.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Rent, mortgage, and utilities. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's very good. And that's something new to me too. I was in the homeless arena for a while providing housing, and I never remember hearing about mortgage assistance. So that's one of the themes that's come up throughout this. Let me see. You've provided shelter and now 50%. Did that mean that you had to kind of expand where people could stay? Did you have to remodel parts of the shelter or use motels?
We started using the hotel motel program pretty quickly. And for us, that was also a new exciting partnership with Nebraska Children and Family Foundation. So locally, we were able to work with program locally to kind of make that happen. And so we kind of serve as the hub for individuals that need to quarantine, for example, and can't enter shelter, but also it helps us keep our capacity where it needs to be. So for our emergency side, we're trying to keep one individual or family per room instead of doubling up, or in some cases, I think we have 6 beds in one room for single women. We're trying to keep just one unit to that room. And so that creates, of course, a bottleneck. And so as needed, we have been able to use a hotel motel program, which is also brand new to us. We've done a lot of new things this year to meet the challenge. So that instantly was a big thing, especially in the spring and summer, working to get that capacity down. It didn't take too long. And I think part of the reason was because funds did become available for like security deposits through some other local programming where our people could really get into housing quickly. But what we're seeing now, and what's really unfortunate, is a lot of people who have never accessed any services before, who maybe are in that low to middle income category, they're kind of coming up to us at this point with 3-4 months of arrears and really in dire situations. And so, and they're people who, you know, would have never been considered homeless or never even thought of themselves as someone who could be close to entering shelter. So it's absolutely needed for sure. But yes, we've had to utilize a lot of creative programming to keep our shelter capacity low.
Yeah. So do you have the ability then to help people find places to live, or do they find their own places? Like, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah.
Maybe not the
So
folks in your shelter, but yeah.
but from the community, yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
we, as a community, we've been really lucky. Early on, United Way here created some community COVID calls where weekly, and then it was every other week, and now it's back to weekly again, unfortunately, because of the rising numbers. But those calls have been I mean, I guess a huge access to other agencies. It's a lot of community leaders, agencies, business leaders. We've got a state senator. I mean, like really anybody that is at all involved in the Grayling community can join the call, and it allows us to network a lot more efficiently and share some of our resources. So that has been huge. What that's done for us is it's allowed us to get out to businesses and other nonprofits who have employees or individuals who are experiencing these issues, and then they can refer them to us. So that's been huge. From that group, we also started a subcommittee of just addressing housing needs. And so providers who are offering the same or similar programming or who got DHHS grants have kind of joined together and networked to decide, I guess, the best route. So for example, there's other organizations that focus on individuals who have children in the home. And so we would refer those families to them first, and then we would take anyone else. But once the word got out there that we were offering this program, it was pretty quickly you know, people reached out to us right away. I guess I was a little shocked by that as I was writing this grant for a program we've never done. And I'm trying to think, how much do I write for? I have no idea. You know, this is totally new territory. I underestimated, and that kind of shocks me because I thought, as I was writing the grant, I thought, oh my goodness, like this is kind of way outside of our comfort zone. Like, are we going to be able to spend this by December 30th? And here we are, almost out of funds. Thankfully, it sounds like a second round is coming through for us, which is great. But I was shocked, and I think a lot of it goes back to families, especially in Nebraska, especially where we're from out here, and what a lot of people consider rural Nebraska. You know, they're not quick to ask for help. It's going to take them a while to feel comfortable asking for help, and so I think families have kind of tried to stick it out, tried to make it work, tried to take other jobs, but I think it's just for some families becoming too much, and then they reach out to us for help.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a lot of really good points. One earlier when you mentioned that you're seeing a clientele that you hadn't seen before. I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, is that we already knew we had this homeless issue, but now we have folks that are facing it for the first time in their lives. They don't know, you know, where to reach out. The other thing is you talked about collaboration and working with your community, which obviously is essential because not one agency can do everything. And so if you guys, you know, and I think that's great that you're meeting. And maybe, you know, maybe that's one of the lessons that this will teach is when all this funding comes in, is that so many of us have to kind of pool our resources together. And let's see, I was thinking of acronyms. So we, the response and recovery money came from Department of Health and Human Services, so CARES money through that. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant, CV, coronavirus, there was a couple of tranches, right? So
Yeah.
that's Nebraska Homeless Assistance Program manages that, so that's really good. And so you think, and I think I've heard that too, that there's some more funding through ESG coming. like
Well,
another
actually, I
tranche?
think that
ESGCV?
the first section is from DHHS. I think that they had allocated some for housing aid, and thankfully we reached out, or we were, you know, as they were kind of asking to continue on what the needs were, we mentioned that we would definitely use more rent assistance and housing assistance money. So some of our additional funds through the end of the year will be through DHHS. However, yes, I think there are additional ESGCV funding as well. I don't know the details on that yet, but we were also, that's our kind of our next round of funding that we'll tap into, is establishing the rapid rehousing and homeless prevention programs through the ESGCV, which is new to us as well. We kind of see DHHS as the initial Band-Aid, if you want to call it that, to kind of deal with the immediate need that we saw and that we're still seeing. And then, of course, like you mentioned, using those funds by December 30th is a challenge. But for us, then what we plan to do is really tap into the ESGCV going forward after that, at that point. And our focus then will shift a bit to specifically people that are either experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. So that'll be a different challenge for us to take on. I think actually we'll have our first family that will enter into that program in November. They are an ideal fit for it. And so that's an exciting change. It's definitely daunting. It's definitely significant. And so for those programs, kind of what you mentioned earlier, we will be having to, you know, work with them to find housing. Whereas the DHHS response to recovery dollars, a lot of that's just paying arrears, rental arrears or mortgage utility arrears, and keeping people housed, stably housed, so that they don't have to enter the system. So the shift will be for us to then move forward with the ESGCV and looking for opportunities to prevent homelessness for those that are the most at risk. It'll be a challenge. I don't know. And in January, we're hoping part of our funding will be to cover a coordinator to help us with that, and create some good landlord relationships in our community. So that's a new hire we will make to help facilitate that. That's a direct result of the ESGCV dollars.
Yep, that's definitely a consistent theme that I hear about. One, the relationship with landlords and finding units for people, that, you know, we're blessed to have this funding now to help people, but it's only as good as if you can find a place to spend it and find a landlord that'll take people. So that's definitely a theme all across the state, isn't it? Yeah.
It is,
yeah, I think,
definitely. It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I think even in Lincoln, they've kind of figured there's over 100 people that are going to need places to live, and are there units that can accept them? So I know Lincoln and Omaha has done a lot of landlord engagement kind of activities. But yeah, well, I just think it's fantastic. And again, you know, I think the theme I say when I do these interviews is just, you know, kudos to you to stand a program up in a short period of time and reach so many people. And to hear that you're almost out of funding is sad, but then to hear you also say, I think more money's coming is good. So
Strange times for sure. I don't know that we've ever been in this position before where we had to think so quick on our feet with funding opportunities, but definitely has benefited our local community in Grand Island for sure.
Fantastic. Well, if you don't have any other comments, I think we could probably conclude the interview. Do you want us to send people to your website, or can people, if they want to learn more
that
about
would be great.
Hope Harbor?
Yeah, for sure. It's hopeharborgi.org.
Okay.
That's our main website. We did put our housing applications online. That was one of the things that we also prioritized, is getting everything digitized. Specifically, Grand Island was a hotspot early on, and so we had our main office closed to the public for a while, and so we direct people online to the initial application, and so all of that's there. If anyone local wants to do an application for housing, they're welcome to do so.
hopeharborgi.org.